some screens like you. Okay, so let's see. Share screen. So we're going to do this. Share audio. There you go. Voila. So I think now, okay, perfect. So now we're in here all together.
I think what I'm going to try to do is lower the camera a little. That might be better.
Whatever you think, Elena.
Mm-hmm.
But
there we go. That's better. Yeah. I see.
Folks on Facebook and everything else, they can see us. So thank you everyone for joining us in this conversation with with Elena Pop. So let me just hide this so we can. There you go. So I think we got everybody now.
Right.
I think we're doing it in a strange way, but it's perfect actually. So how are you? How are things? What's going?
So these days I answer in emojis. So right now I'm a rainbow, a little exploding party thing, an exploding head, a worried look. And I hope that this live stream will help me just get rid of that exploding head. We need to get the word out to people about what's happening so they can protect themselves and not be displaced from their homes.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that you brought this to my attention, because I follow you. I am in your groups. I do like a lot of different things, and I feel like I'm still confused about what's going on in terms of evictions in Los Angeles. So let's just take it from the top. Pretend that I'm a 7-year-old and you're explaining like I'm a little, girl or so. So my question to you is, where are we standing right now in terms of evictions and renters' rights in Los Angeles?
Okay. So if you are a tenant in Los Angeles and you didn't pay your rent for any of the months since the pandemic started, or frankly, if you're a tenant, a foreclosed homeowner, a commercial property tenant, anybody in Los Angeles, anybody in the state, you are protected by something called Judicial Council Rule 1. Now, most people hadn't heard of this Judicial Council. It's just the administrative body that runs the court system statewide. And on April 6th, in response to the fact that this is a health crisis, not a housing crisis, but a health crisis, and in response to all the orders that people should shelter in place, they passed a rule that is the closest thing we have to an actual moratorium. Rule 1 stops evictions. A landlord can file an eviction, but the court won't give that landlord the power to evict the tenant. The case just gets stuck. If a case filed, case won't move forward. Landlord will never get an order to get the tenant evicted as long as Rule 1 is in place.
Got it.
The problem is, and the mechanics of it, is legal and has words like jurisdiction in it, and people don't need.
This is at the judge's level.
Yeah, people don't need to understand all of that, right? You don't understand. It's like when I go to my mechanic, sometimes he tries to explain to me the thing that he did with the engine, and I'm like, dude, tell me where I stick the key and tell me that when I turn it, it's going to go on. So if I'm your mechanic, you don't need to understand all that stuff about someone says. You just need to know that Rule 1 stops evictions. How do I know that? In April, 365,000 people didn't pay their rents. And in April, because of Rule 1, 365,000.
365,000
in LA County
could not pay for the rent. Okay. So just pause there 1 second before we move on to Rule 1, because it's very important. But for a lot of us, we still don't even know, is there, let's just even take it more basic. Is there a ban on evictions today in Los Angeles?
There is not a ban on eviction filings today in Los Angeles. A landlord can file an eviction, but the court will not give them the papers that will allow them to actually evict you today in Los Angeles. And that applies to anybody in the state of California.
Wow. Okay. So right now I'm a renter, and let's say I was not able to pay for my rent in July. Now we're in August. So the landlord can file, my landlord can file for an eviction, but they cannot actually legally evict me.
Correct, because the court won't give them the paper to take the next step.
Got it.
And that's because of Rule 1.
Okay, so now, now let's just break it down for people, because I posted about, I shared with my networks about Rule 1 2 days ago. And my post, I get a lot of, commentary. We engage in a lot of conversation. And I was shocked to see that specifically with this one, only one person. And that other person also mentioned, I can't believe this doesn't have like hundreds of likes and comments. Why? And I was trying to just have that conversation with that person virtually, like on my Facebook page. So I feel like there is a lot of this, like, obviously a lot of us don't know. So this is why I wanted to bring us to this conversation. Okay, Rule 1 is at the judge's level. And you just explained to us that is the mechanics for a judge to give the landlord the paperwork, basically, for an eviction.
Right. So there's 3 ways for people to get evicted. 3 ways. One of them is the landlord comes, violates the law, kicks you out by force, changes the locks. That's illegal. Just because something's illegal doesn't mean it doesn't happen. There has been an increase in that kind of activity. In LA City, in 2 months, there were 300 plus cases reported to LAPD of illegal evictions. So there were probably a few more than that, right? So that's one way. The second is the tenant just self-evicts. Landlord comes and says, I want my rent. Get out of here. If you can't give it to me, get out of here. You say, okay, just give me a minute to pack my stuff, and you leave. Okay, because you cooperated. Now I'm going to tell you a story. On Monday morning, my spouse comes up with my coffee and says, we'll call him James, is on the porch. He slept on our porch. James is a young man who is a friend of a friend who happened to come to one of my parties. We have a big party every year on the 2nd Saturday of December. And he knows that we're good people. And then we actually put him up for a couple of weeks at one point. But he's a friend of a friend. He couldn't pay his rent. The landlord said, get out. So he did. And he's been homeless since the end of July.
Wow.
He got assaulted on Sunday night. And when he started thinking of where could I go, he decided our porch was a safe place to go. Okay. He self-evicted. His landlord said, get out. And he said, okay, let me pack my stuff. Can I put some stuff in the garage until I get settled? So his stuff is in the garage and he's on the street. Don't do that. There's no reason. Landlords cannot kick you out right now. Do not self-evict. And if a landlord is forcing you out, like they've got guys there that are shoving you out the door, dial this number. Are we ready?
Go ahead.
213
213
340 4714.
1 second, Elena. I want to type it on the comments. 213
340 4714. That's our emergency. It's our emergency lockout hotline. It's not the number you call if the landlord tells you get out in a week. Okay? That's not the number you call. It's the landlord you call when the landlord is there with a guy to change the locks and they're pushing you out right now, we're asking people to call that number for immediate threats of eviction,
Repeat
24 hours.
to me again so the folks on Instagram, I want to type it on both. So we got 213
340
340
47
mm-hmm.
14.
14. Okay, perfect. So I'm posting this on the comments and on the comments here so people can have them and save this number. This is an emergency contact number in case you need, you're in an emergency and you
Immediate threat of lockout. Okay.
Mhm.
If you call me, you say, I just got a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit, you're going to get the not so nice Elena saying, this is the immediate emergency lockout. The landlord's pushing you out the door. Got a locksmith there. I've had landlords pull up with trucks and then 3 big guys and they put the stuff in the truck. That's the situation. Okay.
Wow.
It's the immediate lockout. We send people out right away. The LA Tenants Union and the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment is going out. They send people out. They stop the lockout. They've even put people back in. We're not calling the LAPD at these days because the LAPD are showing up with tear gas and riot gear to support the landlord. And so even when we have lots of evidence that what the landlord is doing is illegal, LAPD is taking landlord side. So we're not calling them anymore. Defund the police, support Black Lives Matters. We need a better system than a system that will automatically side with a landlord. So we're taking care of it ourselves.
Some people are saying here in the comments, just to saying, do we call the city council member? Do we call the sheriff? Like people are asking, what? So obviously we're not calling the police, guys. We're not calling the police, and we're not calling the sheriff. But what about
one of the first things we do is the city council member. Okay. When ACE gets involved, it's one of their first calls. They usually send somebody out, and then they're usually the ones, because eventually the landlord will call the police, and so there will be a dialogue with the police and the city council member. So yeah, whenever you're having any kind of problem, call your city council members because they need to know the problems that you are having, right? So there's 3 ways to get evicted. Way number 1 is illegal, that lockout, and you have the number to call if that's happening to you. The other is you just give up. The landlord pushes you around a little and you're out the door. Don't cooperate. There's no reason to cooperate. And the third is through the court process. Mm-hmm. And that's really the only legal way to lock you out. And right now, you cannot be evicted through the court process because of a statewide law. It's a rule, but let's call it a law called Rule 1 that basically stops an eviction from at the moment it's filed. It's filed and it won't move forward. Nothing else will happen. So the sheriff won't ever have a order from a court to kick you out. Now that rule has been in effect since April 6th. And when it was first put in effect, it said that it would stay in effect until 90 days after the governor lifts the state of emergency. The governor keeps saying state of emergency and then keeps continuing it. So the first state of emergency was until May 31st, and then until July 31st, and now until September 31st. But as long as our COVID infection numbers are going up, that state of emergency has to continue being extended. And we don't know how long it'll be before it's finally lifted. So the Judicial Council got sued by 2 entities over Rule 1. So now they've said Rule 1 ends September 1st. It was supposed to end tomorrow. We negotiated until September 1st. So now after Rule 1, after September 1st, we won't have Rule 1. So now our campaign is on the governor, because really the Judicial Council did more than they were there. And the campaign is on the governor. So we're asking everyone to call the governor with a message of #replicate Rule 1, right? Mm-hmm. Replicate Rule 1. We need that same rule. You can also call your state assembly member and your state senator. Replicate Rule 1. We need Rule 1. We're working on other permanent solutions. All Rule 1 does is stop evictions. If your sister moved in with you because she couldn't pay her rent and she self-evicted from her apartment, so now you're violating your lease because your sister's living with you, Rule 1 protects you. If your friend died and you adopted their dog and you are violating your lease by having that dog, Rule 1 protects you. Rule 1 protects everyone. If you're a homeowner that got foreclosed, Rule 1 protects you. Rule 1 stops evictions. Instead of 365,000 evictions in April and May, we had an average of 350 evictions filed in LA County. Right now, the number of people at risk of eviction for just COVID-19 non-payment is 491,000. A number of eviction filings.
I have to, please, people, write it down and write it back to me because I'm going to pay close attention to Elena. But this number is alarming.
It's alarming.
It's a million people couldn't pay their.
You can 491,000. Average household is 3 point something. So the number of people at risk is way bigger than that. This is households, 491,000 households at risk of eviction.
Somebody's asking in the comments, just to post, because I think this is actually very related, and it takes me back to talk to me like I'm a 7-year-old trying to understand. Okay. Can tenants live for free during quarantine?
It's not, rent is not forgiven. So no, your rent is accumulating, but you cannot be evicted for it as long as Rule 1 is in place. Okay.
And one right now is kind of in shaky ground. So we all need to call the governor. We need to call our city council member. You need to call your
for this action, 3: governor, state assembly member, and state senator.
And say, guys, at the state level, we got to flex. This is exactly what flex looks like. We have to call our senator, our assembly member, and the governor. So if you don't know how to get this information, I will. There is a link that I'm gonna post here, and you can go to the link in my bio here for my Instagrammers and get the. If you don't know who your senator is, no shame, guys. So a lot of people out there that don't even vote. So if you don't know, no big deal. I'll post the information with the link in my bio. I'm gonna try to post it here too. And let's get these calls. And what do we have to say when we call our governor and our assembly member and our senator?
Replicate Rule 1.
Replicate Rule 1.
If you say save Rule 1, they tell you that's for the Judicial Council and give you the Judicial Council number. We aren't trying to save Rule 1 anymore. We're trying to replicate it. The governor has the power. The legislature has the power to replicate Rule 1. We could say duplicate it. We could say pass another one. But I thought replicate Rule 1 sounded kind of cool. Replicate Rule 1. Okay, we need a clone of that rule.
Okay, so call your assembly member and the governor, and ask to replicate Rule 1.
Yeah, and we've started a hashtag replicate Rule 1 with R.
No, and while you at it, go ahead and tweet at them and tag them in hashtag replicate Rule 1.
Right.
Perfect. I love it. Okay,
we've answered Maida, who said, will tenant live for free during the quarantine? There is a campaign to hashtag cancel rent. We have not won that, but you don't have to pay your rent during, as long as there's Rule 1, you're safe from eviction. Now, somebody else asked in the chat, local counties, and it's really mainly cities and counties. So let's go to LA. LA is this area that has 88 cities in it, 88 cities, including the city of Los Angeles. and then a whole bunch of areas that are not incorporated as cities that we
Right.
call unincorporated county.
Uh-huh.
So of the 88 cities, about 40 of them have passed local protections. And those local protections say different things in different cities. If we focus just on COVID-19 non-payment of rent, most of those cities give people 12 months to repay their rent. Some 3, some 4, some 6, most 12, and provide a defense to an eviction. But now you're a tenant and you haven't paid your rent,
Uh-huh.
and you have this defense to an eviction, but Rule 1 lifts, you get a summons and complaint, and what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're probably going to send an email to ask an attorney at edn.la. Ask an attorney at edn.la. And then we're going to try to accommodate as many of you as possible. But remember, 491,000 people are going to be in this position when Rule 1 lifts. There is a county-wide coalition called the Right to Counsel Coalition that is trying to develop enough resources. We're working with the UCLA Debt Collective, and they are putting together an internet tool that will allow us to help people file their answers on the internet. But we are not ready, and we are not going to be ready by September 2nd, which is why we need to replicate Rule 1. 99% of tenants that go to court alone lose. So those protections that your local county and local city gave you are close to useless without a lawyer.
Right.
And there aren't enough lawyers. And what we are trying to do is set up a system that allows us during this 12-month repayments period, figure out how we can get people settled. Those that can repay will repay, those that can't repay, longer payment plans, figure out how to negotiate sufficiently long payment plans with sufficient forgiveness so you're not saddled with a huge debt.
Mm-hmm.
And to
can I just pause you there, because as a renter myself, when I lost my main source of income, I called my landlord and I talked to him about it, and he reduced my rent so that I could sustain. But now he's back and he said, well, actually you have to repay me for all of that money that you didn't pay me. And I was like, wait a minute, but I thought the whole point was for me to be, to sustain. So it's ambivalent and it's a gray area. So can you just clarify? And eventually I want to talk also about AB 1436, which people are asking a lot on Facebook. But so right now, if your landlord gave you a discount because of COVID-19, you have to pay that money back.
Well, it depends on what that discount said. If you got it in writing saying, during COVID, instead of paying X, you are going to pay Y, and I am forgiving the difference, then no. But most landlords did not do that, and most tenants didn't get that kind of agreement. The landlord agreed to accept a partial payment. And let's say you're a tenant in LA City. So right now you're protected by Rule 1, so no eviction can happen. But once Rule 1 lifts, the landlord will file a eviction lawsuit. If you're one of the lucky 5,000, right now we can represent 5,000 people. That's what the resources we have for out of 491,000. Do you see why there's a stress level here? If you're one of those lucky 5,000, then you will win that case, because the landlord should wait. So if there's any landlords out there, eventually I think we need to make it go viral, message to landlords to not evict people during the 12-month repayment period, because we're going to win those cases because you have 12 months to repay. So if landlords wait the 12 months, then we'll be okay. But we think that the loss of Rule 1 will result in landlords starting to file evictions right away. And so then it'll be a matter of making sure you get the right legal help to fight that eviction on your own until we can develop the infrastructure to get you representation. And so you need to make sure you stay tuned to AUDA's website and to the Eviction Defense Network Facebook page, so that you can stay up to date as we develop resources. We will post those resources there so you can plug in and get your answer done and get assigned to a lawyer. But that infrastructure is not in place yet. We did not expect the Judicial Council to just all of a sudden say, sorry, just till September 1st, even though we originally said 90 days after lifting the state of emergency. Now, I don't want to defend them too much, but they also said we can change our minds at any time. They have the authority, they have the power to do that. But I think it's an irresponsible move, and it's an equally irresponsible move on the part of the legislature and the governor not to replicate that rule immediately so that we have the time to develop that infrastructure and to do something like passing AB 1436, which you also want to talk about.
Yeah, and I just want to pause there because I'm posting, I'm both sharing where to find the information for your representative. It's right here on Instagram on the comments. It's pinned on the comments. It also is on Facebook. You see it on the banner, coming in and out. And I'm going to get it solid so that you can take a picture or do something about it, because this is extremely important. This is why we must call the governor, the senators, the assembly members, and just everyone to really urge them to replicate Rule 1.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Sometimes I'm surprised that people don't even know who governs us, right? Who is in charge of this stuff. So if you live in a city, there's probably a city council. So you should call your city council member, and you've put up how to find your city council member.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in unincorporated, if you live in LA County, you also have a member that represents you in the County Board of Supervisors.
That's true.
And then at the state level, we have our state assembly member and our state senator. And at the federal level, we have a congressional representative and a congressional senator. So that's 6 people plus your mayor, right? So if you figure out who all these people are for you, and every morning you wake up and you tag them, tweet them, Facebook them, email them, and call them.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And just tell them your plight. Tell them your story. Tell them how you lost your job.
Absolutely.
Tell them, do a 30-second video about the loss of your job and the pressure your landlord's putting you through, and why we need to replicate Rule 1. And our second message right now is cancel rent and pass AB 1436.
It's also I just wanted to interject here real quick, because that is also very empowering for us as community members to call the people that we elect to represent us. Well, some of us don't get to elect them because we're undocumented, or we can vote for whatever reason. We're not maybe at the age, we're maybe homeless. I mean, there are thousands of reasons, but that is something so empowering when you call them and you said, this is why I lost my job. This is who I am. Please help me. And replicate Rule 1, pass AB 1436, whatever it is, the call to action. But guys, this is part of us self-healing and growing collectively, because unless we impact our elected officials, the people that can make these things happen, we're not going to be able to get the things that we want. And I hear constantly people say our representatives don't got our backs, but it's our duty also to share with us why the things that matter to us, are important to us. So please, with your cafecito at lunch break, whatever it is, just go ahead and call these folks. Be nice to them. Tell them your story. That's the most compelling thing. Like Elena said, and make sure that you do this constantly. Post on your social media. I mean, I'm like, again, alarmed to see that there are not people more invested. So this is why we're doing this educational program, so that you can understand what's going on and get involved. So
People
now
feel
let's
helpless
go.
often. People feel helpless and overwhelmed, and they don't
Mhm.
quite know what to do. There's a post right now in the chat about people who are incarcerated and can't, or were previously incarcerated and can't vote. And there is movement afoot to change that. That people, once they've paid their debt to society, should be able to regain all of their rights as a citizen. But you know what? When I call these numbers, they don't ask me if I'm eligible to vote. So make the calls and tell your story. Make the
Yeah.
calls. Tell your story. You may not be a legal citizen, but you are a member of your community and therefore entitled to voice your opinion. You are represented by these electeds. People often also say, yeah, but they won't do anything for us. Well, we have to make them. And why do we have to make them? Because for the most part, our electeds are in the pockets of the big lobby groups.
They're in the pockets that are on top of them and have their cell phone numbers and are calling them all the time.
Right. And what they care about, for the most part, there are exceptions, but for the most part, they care about two things: donors and votes. The landlord lobby, the real estate lobby, the bank lobby, they've got money. Yeah. But the tenants have votes. They need to hear from us. So I'm going to send out an action alert, so that what we need, like, if you're just going to make one call, I think it's the governor. If I can talk you into making 3 calls a day, it's the governor, your assembly member, and your senator. If I can talk
3 calls, put a heart on the comments, people. Get involved, be invested. Put a little comment. I see the hearts coming. Get invested. Are we gonna make these 3 calls? Please put a little comment and let us know that you will. That we can count on you making these 3 calls.
And you should join groups that send you action alerts. Like, sometimes our target is the city council. Sometimes our target is the board of supervisors. Right now, our target is the governor, replicate Rule 1, and the state assembly, pass 1436, and the state senate pass 1436. And we need to cancel rent, because these are temporary solutions. Okay. AB 1436 is helpful because while it does not forgive rent, it takes the fight out of eviction court. It gives you 12 months to repay. At the end of the 12 months, you cannot be evicted. They have to pursue you in small claims court or in regular civil court, and it can't have an impact on your credit. So you won't lose your housing. It won't impact your credit, but you still owe the money. So it's not the perfect solution, but it buys us time. And it's what we think we can get in this legislative session that ends at the end of the month. So right now, the focus is call the governor, call your state assembly member, call your state senator with a message of replicate Rule 1 and pass AB 1436.
Okay, there we go. So I need definitely, I'm gonna post that on the comments too. Replicate Rule 1 and pass
AB 1436.
AB 1436. Now, let's take it from the top again. We talked a lot about Rule 1, AB 1436. Who put this out there? What's going on? Tell us, like, fair bunch. So, and cancel rent. Some people are saying and cancel rent too.
Yes. So, got it. The tenant unions, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, Tenants Together, these are organizations that organize tenants, put out a rallying cry of cancel rent. And there are 60,000 people on a listserv that have signed up to say that they are on rent strike, but really most of them just can't pay their rent. And it's a part of a political movement to cancel rent. But our lobbyists, because the tenants have lobbyists in Sacramento too, our lobbyists in Sacramento were not making headway. And so we put in this alternative proposal, an interim proposal, and it's AB 1436.
Mhm.
It takes away the eviction risk. The landlord, instead of filing, if you owe money, you have 12 months to pay, and at the end of the 12 months, the landlord needs to come to regular court, not eviction court, to collect that money. So it doesn't put your housing at risk. I get that the debt is a concern for people, but we will work on that. It'll give us time to work on that rent debt.
Okay.
I'm currently, I can't say I'm unemployed because I'm working 19 hours a day, but I'm not getting paid because my agency can't pay me right now because of COVID. I'm a homeowner. Fortunately, I have a federally insured loan, and so I have a forbearance through September 1st and can probably get an extension. I'm worried about that accumulating debt. I'm worried about what they will tell me about my repayment options at the end of that period. But I also know that it was the best course of action for us at this time. I wasn't going to turn over my keys to the bank, and neither should tenants, right? Be concerned about the debt, work with us to resolve the debt in the next legislative session. But for now, replicate Rule 1, pass AB 1436, message to the governor, your state assembly member, your state senator.
Does EDN, the Evictions Defense Network, has a Twitter account?
Yes, we do.
Which one is it? Some people are asking because I guess there's already tweeting at the governor.
Why don't, for it's to tell you the truth, I don't do the Twitter account, so I don't know it myself. But just go ahead and tweet at the governor.
Look at Evictions Defense Network, and this is Elena. Elena, did you have an account yourself?
I have a Twitter account that is active, so you can also just look for Elena IPOP and do that. We're getting our social media act together mainly because of Auda. Before COVID, before COVID, most of our clients weren't on social media. We help people that are very, very poor, who have digital divide issues. So I wasn't all that into all of this internet stuff. But hey, Pasta. Yes. And I'm also, both Eden has a Facebook account and I have a Facebook account.
And we need to get Pasta. We need to get Elena in the combo couch.
I've been 4 times. Yeah. Yes.
Excellent.
So for those of you that don't know about the combo couch, it's a interview format, a little bit like this one, and it's on YouTube, and I get asked a lot of important questions. So it's a question of continuing to educate people, and everybody on here needs to go out to the world and tell 10 other people.
Or this live stream right now, if you see on the comment box, next to the comment box, there is like an arrow. Go ahead and forward it to a bunch of friends, guys, because there's a lot of people that we know that don't know how important Rule 1 is and AB 1436 and cancel rent is. If you are a renter and if you have renter friends, it's your duty to do this. This is your job.
And if you're not a renter, and if you're totally not affected, don't fool yourself. Mm-hmm. You're going to find someone on your front porch one Monday morning, the way I did this past Monday, asking if he can live in my backyard or in my front porch because it's not safe to live on the street. Okay. I go for a walk.
We don't have enough shelters, of course, and our unhoused community is still in a pandemic, is still roaming around on the streets, which is very
growing, and that's the problem. It's growing.
36,000, right, Elena?
It was 60,000. The homeless count this past year had grown to 60,000. Yeah. And according to the Luskin Institute, based on the 365,000 households not having paid rent, they were predicting an increase in the homeless count of 120,000 homeless people.
What is going on? What is going on?
So I go for a walk in Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park is not near Skid Row. there is a full-on homeless encampment on the side of Parque Mexico.
Yeah.
And now they're spreading, because there's so many, into Lincoln Park. And it's because people have no place else to go, right? Everywhere you go, there is an encampment. If you don't want encampments in your neighborhood, save Rule 1.
And
AB 1436.
you added cancel rent.
And cancel rent. Yes. We still have a cancel rent campaign. I just think that folks made a pragmatic decision to put that on the back burner and do it for the next legislative session. AB 1436, especially if we replicate Rule 1, AB 1436 together will keep people housed. I'll give you one more statistic. Pre-COVID, 2019, LA County, pre-COVID, 2019, LA County, 3,330, 3,381 average evictions a month. Okay, 3,300. Post Rule 1, average 350. That's an 89% drop in pre-COVID evictions.
Mhm.
So Rule 1 stops evictions. Rule 1 stops homelessness. We are in the middle of a health crisis. We do not need to, we will not flatten the curve. We absolutely will not flatten the curve if our homeless rate goes up by 120,000 homeless people.
So what's the timeline for Rule 1? When are they decided if they're going to replicate it or if they're going to keep it? When is this happening? And also, please give us a timeline for AB 1436. How much we need to flex?
Now, we need to flex today,
Now.
tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. I've been telling people do it each day and every day. When the target was the Judicial Council, I called them every day. And every day I told them a different story of someone I had helped the day before. Okay. So we need to do that with the governor. I started my personal calls to the governors yesterday, and I hooked up with this really nasty young man who needs to not be answering the phones. Now, that probably tells me that he'd gotten a lot of calls already, right? And he tried to just make me a tick mark, right? He tried to just say one more asking for Rule 1, and I didn't let him. I said, I'm sorry, no. I'm the head of an agency that's going to be handling these evictions, and I need you to help me figure out on September 2nd, when we start getting flooded with people that have eviction summonses and complaints and are going to have 5 days to answer, I want you to tell me who I should send them to, because we're not going to be able to handle that. So local office of the governor, I mean, who? Their assembly member? Who's going to do these answers? And I just kept him on the phone and kept asking him, and he kept trying to make me a tick mark. No, you can't make me a tick mark. You can connect me to someone who will answer that question or answer the question for me. Those are your options. Don't make me a
Senator and your assembly member, guys, call them right now, because they actually are required to listen to you.
Yeah. Governor, senator, assembly member, pressure. Make sure they know they are losing your vote.
Tomorrow, right? Tomorrow they're having a conversation about this. So is that still happening, or is it being postponed?
No, so that was the Judicial Council having that conversation tomorrow. They already had it. And so they gave us, they were going to vote tomorrow to cancel Rule 1. They said, okay, no, we're canceling it effective September 1st.
Okay.
That's why we shifted the dialogue. We shifted the targets to the governor and the state assembly and the state senate. That's why we're here. We're at the governor, state assembly, state senate with replicate Rule 1.
Was it September 1st? So right now is August 13th. So we have about 2 weeks, which I know like so much time, but it's not a lot of time. These folks work only 5 days a week. Let's not forget they're Monday to Friday folks. They're 9 to 5 people. So we need to really get to it. Write letters, calls, tweets, emails. I'll be happy to share whatever you share. Absolutely. And we need to have you back, Elena. We're up almost an hour in this conversation, but we need to have you back so that we can continue the combo and educating more folks. So I believe we are scheduling something for next week as well.
Yeah, we did schedule something for next week. We should figure out when that was.
So for folks that are listening, please go ahead and share with your friends. Tell them about this conversation, and we're going to have another conversation on Monday. And I am so grateful for you because you do the work of God. Thank you, Elena, for keeping us updated, for doing this amazing work for so many like myself that are renters that are struggling. And that is tough. And not just me. The 437,000 people that couldn't pay rent, on their behalf, I want to thank you.
Thank you. So let's keep educating people. The metaphor I've started using at first, we are using this tsunami of evictions, right?
I call it
evictions tsunami, but we're also using this metaphor. The crisis opened up a gaping wound. We were bleeding out on the floor, and the Judicial Council came along and said, "Oh my God, let's put a tourniquet on that wound." But they didn't clean the wound because that debt is still there.
Yeah.
And then our city council members and our board of supervisors came and said, that looks really bad. Let me put a Band-Aid on that. But they didn't clean the wound either. So we still have all of this threat of infection and threat of bleeding out. Now the Judicial Council is saying tourniquet comes out off on September 1st. Que Dios los bendiga, right? The governor and the legislature and the Senate have been standing around doing nothing. They need to replicate Rule 1 and pass AB 1436. And in the next session, they need to figure out a way to cancel rent.
Thank you. Thank you, Elena, so much for that. We will have you on Monday at 6 p.m. We let the world know that you're going to be here so they can answer. There's so many other questions, like, for example, if you can't pay the rent even after everything is lifted, what's going to happen to that debt? But let's answer that question when we return on Monday at 6 p.m. with you. And ever now. We continue on the pandemic, and we need to support and help each other. And I'm counting on you to help me spread the word as a renter, as an involved citizen, and you also get involved and share this information, and let's make sure that all of our friends, our neighbors, that we can stop the avalanche of evictions and tsunami. Call your governor, your assembly person, and also your senator, and ask them to replicate Rule 1 and to pass AB 1436 and to cancel rent. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of you that just joined. We'll be back with Elena Pope, an Evictions Defense Network lawyer, and she will be answering more questions about evictions, where we're at. And we have 2 weeks to really flex and to really show that this is an important topic for us, and that we must support Angelinos that were unable. 437,000 people were unable to pay rent.